Hi, and welcome to another episode of KammaKast. Today I'm being joined by Joseph Holmes, who is the Executive Director of Resources for West Berkshire Council. Joseph, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Orla. Pleased to meet you.
As always, we like to talk to people across various different industries that kind of impact either housing, real estate, financial services. And it'd be great to hear a little bit more about your role and what's happening at West Berks, Joseph.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I'm our Executive Director of Resources and our Chief Finance Officer at West Berkshire Council. And we are a local authority in southern England, taking up most of the, as our name says, kind of the western half of Berkshire. So we are quite a rural authority with some market towns and villages in it. And we declared a sort of climate emergency a couple of years ago now, back in 2019. And so we've been working as a council to get to net zero for 2030. So that's our sort of overall ambition that we have in place. So we have an environment strategy which we've pulled together that's been approved by our politicians, and then we've got a variety of sort of actions which sit behind that to try and get us to that net zero position in what's 8 years now. Time flies in trying to achieve that.
That's quite an amazing, really ambitious goal because 2030 seems to be this year where it does kind of mark quite a big line in the sand in terms of a number of the kind of laws and consultation to kind of push the net zero agenda. But also, one of the statistics I've heard is that in general, we all need to reduce the world needs to reduce carbon emissions from the built environment by 40% by 2030 if we're going to hit net zero by 2050. So quite a significant mountain to climb with respect to that statistic. But you guys have gone a whole kind of massive jump forward and said, actually, we're going to be net zero by 2030. And what was it like? I love to kind of see that kind of ambition and leading by example. And what was the kind of main driver behind kind of going, actually, we're going to go for 2030?
Yeah, I think that was exactly that, the ambition. So the ambition, the sort of the ambition to try and get to that, and into residents and the public, and the ambitions that lots of people have got to try to get to net zero as quickly as we possibly can. And then I think it's all about then having that sort of roadmap of kind of how we get there, and how we with the public to try and get that buy-in. As you mentioned, lots of things in there that clearly we do have as a council some influence. There's lots of things that we have a lot less influence over, but certainly over our own estate, for example, and transport, and looking to see how we can decarbonise there as much as we can, as well as having a look at our broader asset as well, sort of supporting other initiatives like greater EV charging points, for instance, as well. So we have quite a few levers that we can pull, not everything. There are lots of different avenues that we can look at.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, there's quite, as you mentioned, like quite a few different levers and lots of different aspects that you have to think about as a council in a net zero strategy. Actually, more than your average institution, I would imagine. What are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing in kind of reaching your goal by 2030?
Yeah, so I think sort of challenges wise, obviously, as you said, it is a very ambitious goal. So time is one of those key challenges. And also, I'm a chief finance officer, so so financing that sort of net zero ambition as well is undoubtedly going to be a key challenge, especially with inflation where it is at the moment. That there's a lot of additional costs potentially then going through there in trying to support us getting to net zero. But of course, on the flip side, there's sort of opportunities through that as well, because as we sort of decarbonise buildings, for instance, and sort of rationalise some of our office accommodation, then you're releasing both financial savings as well as reducing your environmental footprint as well. So there are two sides to that, but But certainly, there are a lot of challenges around this, and I think sort of financing net zero is an area that I'm really interested in. And we launched a community municipal investment, or I say a green bond. It's not quite that, but it's not too far away. And we launched one of those. We're the first council in the country to launch one. We launched that actually a couple of years ago now to help raise finance to support some of our net zero ambition.
That's extremely interesting, because I guess that is probably one of the biggest challenges, is how do we finance net zero strategies, and how much of that should come from public sector, how much should come from private sector. Can you kind of drill into a little bit of the detail of the community municipal bond? I think it's a fantastic initiative. Are you the first council to do something like this?
Yeah. So we're the first council to launch one. So we launched it back in July 2020. And our aim was to raise £1 million through the initiative, which we did get to. We sort of set ourselves a 3-month target to achieve that, and we got there just over a week early. And we had lots of investors from across the country, so people from up and down the country in the UK were investing, but we had quite a significant amount of local investment as well. And what was really interesting was where we had people who are local who are investing, they generally were investing twice as much as people who are not from the local area. So where we were able to get across our point around how we wanted to get to net zero, how this £1 million was going to fund some schemes to assist with that, that seemed to really help with our local population understanding that message. And I think actually buying into, sort of physically buying into that. See, a lot of the money that as a local authority we get through council tax, but this opportunity meant that where people were interested in the schemes, they then could invest. And the minimum amount of investment that somebody had to put in if they wanted to be part of the scheme was £5. So we tried to keep it as sort of open to as many people as possible. And how we often, it's only for us at West Berkshire, how we normally raise money for capital schemes is through the Public Works Loan Board. That's part of the Treasury in effect, and they provide a borrowing rate to local authorities. But through using this community municipal investment, where we're able to go directly to people, we actually made a saving of over 70 basis points on our borrowing for these schemes by doing this piece of work, which it saved the overall taxpayer £15,000. So even if you weren't investing in this or had no real interest in it at all, it still meant that we were borrowing at a significantly cheaper rate. So the overall local taxpayer saved because of that. So I think that was an attraction of this as well. So the schemes were for getting us towards net zero. So there was that sort of environment strategy angle. But even if you weren't part of it, there was still a benefit there because we were able to generate savings through having lower borrowing costs than we normally would.
Yeah, fantastic. And I can totally see from a local person's point of view why there's like a double return there. If you're investing in a bond, that's the proceeds are going to improve your local area, as well as the return that you hopefully get off the back of the bond as well. So it's kind of quite a virtuous circle, really, introducing something like this, and £1 million can go a long way to kind of, I guess, kickstarting a lot of activities that are really important, particularly as you mentioned, we have less than 8 years now to get to 2030 as well. So how do you decide how to prioritize what the investment goes into, and is there specific things that you're limited to as part of the terms of the bond?
So as part of the investment, it had to be on a sort of capital scheme, and given that they were the first in the country, I really wanted to make sure that these were capital schemes that we're going to deliver. What I didn't want to do is say, hey, everyone, kind of invest with us, and then this thing that we hope will happen, it may not happen. So I wanted to make sure that it was projects that we were going to deliver. So it's roughly split 50-50. So about half of the £1 million was invested in raising PB, which we put on top of a range of our buildings. So we put some on top of one of our day centres, on top of a school, as well as our own corporate office, and also a building that we own actually up at Greenham Common, which is sort of where we had the launch event took place, and obviously a really fantastic setting and an area of a real local importance for nature. So that was a really nice tie-in. So about half the money went there, and then the other half went on a variety of schemes. So some was on sort of flood alleviation related schemes, some was where we were trying to use more sustainable and environmentally friendly materials for some of our sort of highways, furniture and traffic lights, for instance, and some was on tree planting, for instance, as well. So we spent it on a sort of variety of schemes, and we did that so that when investors get their return, so if you invest your money, you get a return twice a year, it's on an annuity basis, so you get your sort of capital and interest back. We're able, with that return, to send out some communications around what we've done. So because it's in a variety of schemes, it enables us to showcase a bit more around what we're doing to get to net zero. So I think that makes it a bit more interesting than just one scheme where, of course, we can take 10 different photographs as people get their returns, but it perhaps doesn't give such a breadth, certainly for our first launch of a bond, than this does. I think your point around what else we spent on, what was interesting is we worked with a company called Abundance Investment, and they did all the administration of this, and they provided an option where investors could donate their investment return back to us. Now, the investment return was 1.2%, so nobody was going to overnight suddenly have an absolutely sort of massive return. The purpose of this is you're investing in a sort of ESG side of things. But we did have this option that people could donate their return back. And the first time we did it, we had 1 in 6 investors actually provided their funding back to us, or their return that they would have got back to us on the interest side of things, which was great because we have a variety of wildflower verge schemes across West Berkshire, where we work with the local Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire Wildlife Trust to have these wildflower verges up and down the district. So we're able to fund, I think it was an extra sort of 2,000 plus extra seeds as part of that wildflower verge project. So there was actually some additionality from this investment. So it wasn't just, you give us some money, you get a return, and then we can show you where that's been spent. Actually, we can do that, and also because of you doing this and donating some money back to us, we've done some extra things over here. I think that was really powerful because I said earlier we would normally go to the Public Works Loans Board, which is a really simple and effective way for us to borrow, and we're highlighted to always go there for most of our borrowing in the future. But there isn't any of that additionality there. It's just a pure and very useful transaction for us to have. Whereas even though this was extra work, it was over a sort of 3-month period, there's a lot more thinking and there's a different level of risk for us to consider. It has meant that we've got some of that additionality as well as the fact that it's a cheaper form of borrowing for us. So that was a really interesting, I think it's a byproduct.
Absolutely. And I guess looking at new innovative finance solutions to problems that do actually require different and smarter thinking. It sounds like this has been an extremely successful endeavour with the bond. Is there any appetite to do another one in the future?
Yeah, I think we would be really interested. So we have some land where we are proposing to build a solar farm. So I think utilising a bond to finance some of that, I think would be really interesting. And what's been really positive is I think it's 5 or 6 other authorities from across the country have also issued their own sort of climate bond equivalents through a similar mechanism to ours as well. So it started to open that up more widely across the sector as hopefully a newer form of borrowing compared to how local authorities have borrowed in the past. It is not going to finance all of our capital financing needs. We have a capital programme of over £200 million, so we're never going to finance all of it through this. But for specific projects where we want to engage with the sort of local and sort of wider community, I think it's a really positive way of working with and helping to sort of tell that story of what we do.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think we talk about this a lot here, is that there is quite a lot of education still needed about climate change at a kind of individual consumer level, where climate change is a term that's like thrown out, but it is quite vast and all encompassing. And actually on a council level, it's quite a nice microcosm of I guess what the grander global problem is, because like you will need to address all those individual things, whether it's around sustainable waste management, or solar energy generation, or decarbonizing housing stock, particularly for in areas that are more deprived. So I think it really does exactly what it says on the tin in terms of community municipal investment. But the broader thing about that is it's actually educating people, because as you say, it's like that bond itself isn't going to be enough to address the entire problem across the council, but it does get people thinking in the right way as well and engaged in it. And certainly I think people reinvesting their returns is a really, really nice upside of that as well. Do you find yourself in kind of as a unwitting consultant to other councils now who are interested in doing the same in their council?
Yes, I have spoken to a lot of colleagues who are thinking of doing something similar, which is one of the really positive things about working in local government, is that there is a lot of cross council working, and working together on some of the big issues that we face. So it's been really good to do some of that, and I think the way that this can be delivered has lots of other areas that it could apply to. So when people are investing in normal bonds or sort of other investments, it's quite hard to actually understand where it is that your money's gone, especially if it's an ISA or something. It's just with a financial institution, and then that invests it wherever it does. Whereas the really positive thing about this is that we know the projects that this money has gone to, so you can actually go out and look at them and sort of see and touch and feel those projects. So we can provide that really strong link between individuals financing and where it's gone. So I think it would have quite a lot of resonance in the housing side of things. The local authority or other sort of public sector institution had a housing stock or a housing company, then it would be a really interesting, I think, way of financing that, because people could clearly see, actually which houses this has either helped to finance the house itself, or if you're retrofitting, that where that funding has gone, and I think that provides a really strong level of accountability as well to us as the council.
Absolutely. And on that point, as we're getting closer to 2030, what are the big areas of focus in terms of probably tackling the biggest offenders? I'd imagine the housing stock does play a big part in that as well.
Yeah. Housing stock does. We don't have much of a housing stock anymore as an authority, but we do have a number of buildings. So we've got a variety of corporate offices. We're actually reducing the number of those at the moment. So that will help us reduce our environmental footprint. But we have things like leisure centres, where there will be significant sort of carbon emissions there. Wide range of different sort of operational assets like schools, libraries, and all of our transport infrastructure as well. So there's quite a lot of large areas that sort of contribute to our emissions that we need to focus on to see how we can decarbonise, see how we can improve energy efficiency across those areas, and that's all part of our own strategy to help us get towards net zero.
Absolutely. And I guess one of the things as we get closer to 2030 that it will be important for you is how you're tracking progress against your target. Could you share a little bit about how you do that? Because it's always really interesting to know the different ways in which progress can be measured.
Yeah, so we, I suppose, as a public body, we have our environment strategy is publicly available, and my colleagues on our environment team do a really good job of doing an overall sort of annual summary as to how we are getting on with that journey, some of the initiatives that have been brought forward. So if I look at sort of last year's review, I spoke about the wildflower project, but a variety of other things, like where we have a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and we've just completed some more active travel schemes to encourage people to sort of walk and cycle in the district more. And then we have looked at sort of school cycle storage projects, for instance, as well, where we're deploying electric vehicle charging points. So there's lots of sort of more nudge factors that we can work on as well, that we keep track of. But because we are a sort of public institution, we have a scrutiny function by councillors who hold the administration to account on where they've said, right, we're going to get to net zero. We have to show actually, this is the work that we are doing towards getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. So many aspects to it. It is really, really interesting. Is there any other kind of parallel projects that you're working on that you'd like to share with us or any of the listeners?
Yeah, I think the other one I sort of mentioned a little bit before was our solar farm. So I said that's just going through the planning process at the moment. But I think that will be a really interesting project if that comes through. So I think that's got the ability to make quite a significant impact on certainly getting us towards net zero through that production of sort of solar there. So I think that's one that we're watching really, really closely. Obviously, we know that sort of energy prices are going up, but then we've got inflation costs as well on having to manage that project through. And even though we've put solar PV on a variety of buildings, we've certainly not done something of that scale before. So we're really excited about that. But sort of CFO hat on as well, it comes with its risks and challenges as well. But I think because we've declared that climate emergency and we've got that strategy to get ourselves to net zero by 2030, it then pushes a lot of policy sort of incentives for us to look at things like developing solar farms, which perhaps if we hadn't have done, we wouldn't have looked at perhaps as quickly as we have. So I think you said right at the start of this around that ambition. Well, that has helped to drive us on to certainly look at things much faster than perhaps we would have done otherwise.
Yeah, you're right. There's something about declaring something as an emergency that really does help kind of focus the mind and help kind of push forward decision making, a little bit like the pandemic, that a lot of stuff happened a lot quicker than it usually would because we really needed to. So there is something in the mindset about actually acknowledging that this is an emergency, which a lot of people and institutions do, but a lot of others, because it feels very far away and it's kind of not entirely. Although with the summer we've just had, I don't think you can really argue that we're not seeing the signs of it already. But I am really excited and interested to follow your progress on the solar farm. Would that be a council first as well? Are you forerunners in doing something like this, or has it been done anywhere else before?
No, there are some councils across the country at the moment who do have solar farms. So not a huge amount, but there are some out there who have done it already. So again, that's one of the really sort of positive things about working in the sector, is that you can learn from one another around trying to work through some of the sort of the pitfalls and hazards that they've had to overcome as well, which is really constructive. So we're certainly probably not every council has a solar farm, but there are some out there already which we'll undoubtedly try to learn from.
Yeah, and is there a kind of, would there be interest in providing case studies on some of these initiatives when they're further along, for that reason of kind of hoping to inspire other councils or other kind of similar type organisations like yourselves to take the plunge, where you can see that actually there is a benefit to investing in this way, and here's what the benefits are?
Yeah, again, really helpful. Yeah, hopefully, by working in the sector, we have organisations like the Local Government Association who kind of represent pretty much every council in the country, and they try to pick up on bits of best practice and try to share that more widely. So I know they've kind of looked at the community municipal initiative that we've launched, and then tried to share that around as well. So we have that. There's something called UK 100 who are looking at where local authorities can help to get to net zero as well. So there's a variety of organisations out there who are kind of around the sector trying to highlight some of that. The Green Finance Initiative as well are all looking at what different people in the sector are doing, and yeah, trying to share that best practice around so that we can learn from.
Fantastic. Joseph, on the educational piece, because I think that's one of the kind of key secondary benefits of the CMI. How did you go out there and drive initial engagement, so that initial education piece to get the community to invest? And now that the bond is deploying capital, that it's closed, how are you continuing to educate members of the community and the now investors into the bond about what you're doing and what progress you're making and what those benefits are?
Yeah, so when we launched this, we actually launched it right at the start of the COVID pandemic. So we weren't intending to launch it right in the midst of the pandemic. So that had a really big impact. So we were hoping that we have lots of town and parish councils across the district, and we're hoping that we'll be able to get out physically much more. Now, obviously, the sort of lockdowns, etc., prevented us from doing that. But we ran a variety of webinars. There were quite a few online sort of seminars popped up that we could talk to the residents of the area about this and try to engage with them on this scheme. I think, as I said earlier, because we have run this on an annuity basis and you get your return twice a year, you do have that ability to send some communications back to those people who invested to say, okay, so you invested here, this is the amount of energy, say, that has been generated by those solar PV panels that we put on top of these different buildings, so that there's a really direct link, therefore, between what you've done and how that contributes towards our net zero ambitions. Or similarly, where some of that money has gone into tree planting schemes, then we can start to make some estimations as to how that has assisted just on sort of local air quality or the amount of sort of carbon which has been taken out of the atmosphere. So we make 2 returns every single year. The investment itself is a 5-year investment, so we have those 10 opportunities to do that, and that's how we try to sort of communicate back out to people. But also we're able then to engage them in where we're making further changes to help us get to net zero. So we're, for instance, putting on additional food waste collection in the coming weeks here in West Berkshire. I'm not sure how interest people outside of West Berkshire necessarily will be when we actually do that, but again, like the principle of us doing that, I think again is probably really helpful just to show that we are continuing to try to get towards net zero.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're getting kind of positive feedback and I guess a positive feedback loop in terms of engagement and people being more educated around all these areas.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the bits of work that Abundance will do is they're doing an external study with a university to have a look at kind of why people did invest and then how they sort of felt about investing and the impact that's had, so that we've then got that stronger evidence base to look at why people actually invested in this in the first place. Was it because we're seen as a local authority to be a relatively safe institution to invest in, or was it because it had that environmental sort of social governance aspect, and that's what attracted people in? So I think that will be really important for us to understand when we're looking at any future launches of another CM.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Well, Joseph, I have to thank you so much for coming to chat to us today. A really different perspective on all the climate conversations that we've been having, and really inspiring to see a local authority like yourselves being really bold and really ambitious with having a 2030 net zero target, and all the kind of innovative ways that you're either engaging local community or financing it to make sure that it happens. So thank you so much for sharing, and I hope we can reach a few people with your story as well, so that we can further inspire more councils and more institutions to do likewise. So yeah, thanks for the chat today, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks very much.